Today's guest was named the 13th coach in Boston Celtics history on July 3rd, 2013. He's the former head coach of the Butler Bulldogs, where some guy named Hayward and him, I wonder whatever happened to him, made some fantastic motions throughout the nation. He's an NBA All-Star Game coach, a two-time Final Four coach, a three-time Coach of the Year in the Horizon League, but most importantly, he is my guest today. Please put your hands together and welcome Mr. Brad Stevens. Hey, welcome to Springfield, Coach.
Thank you. It's good to be here. I thought when I signed up for it, this was going to be a quiet week in August.
Yeah, you guys have been pretty just bored, huh? Just sitting in Waltham.
It's been quite a summer.
It has. I do want to. We'll eventually talk, but so I want to get to your journey first, because so much of your journey, you and I are almost exactly the same age. Our careers profile a little differently. And I want to talk about your ascent. And so Celtic fans know a thing or two about guys from Indiana. Celtic fans of a certain age know a thing or two about the town of French Lick. You're an Indiana guy as well. Legend has it that before kindergarten, before PM kindergarten, you would watch taped basketball games and, I don't want to say study. I have a 5-year-old. What he's doing is not studying. Is that true? Were you watching basketball that early? Is that the earliest memory?
That's what my parents say.
Yeah.
Now, it's kind of like when you were playing Little League as a kid. My batting average is a little bit better now that I'm 40. I threw the ball a little harder, so maybe my parents exaggerated that. I don't know, but I never. The one thing that I can tell you very honestly is I never wanted to be a coach.
Really?
I wanted to be a player.
Uh-huh.
Everybody in here that's played the game or that's young enough to still be playing the game, you don't dream of being a coach. You dream of playing, and my time to play ran out when I was done with college, and so after a year in the real world, I was fortunate enough to get into coaching, and I thought that coaching was a lot like playing. I thought it was about, I had a pretty good idea of what was going on, and I learned pretty early on. I didn't know anything about it, so I had a lot of work to do.
I want to talk the X's and O's of the things that you just sort of laid out for me, because your experience at DePaul is remarkable. You played all 101 games that were available in your 4 years. And it strikes me that is likely a testimony to your just actual love of this space that we're inhabiting right now. 101 games. And I'm not foolish enough to think that you were completely healthy for those games, all of them. 101 games, is that a testament to just how much you recognized that the playing days might be over soon and you just wanted to milk every bit you could out of it?
Yeah, I just, like anybody else, you love to play. I used to love practice, and my DePaul experience was interesting, though, and I think kids in here, you'll especially appreciate this. You're going to be on teams where, you might play a lot, and you're going to be on teams where you don't play as much, and your opportunity kind of varies. I was one of those few guys that went to college, played a lot as a freshman, about the same as a sophomore, less as a junior, hardly at all as a senior. And at the time, that was really hard to kind of grasp, right? Now, having coached for 13 years in college, having recruited in college, I understood that the guys they brought in were better than I was.
Sure.
And the other thing that you understand when you're living that is this game is about how you act as a teammate. This game is about what you do from the standpoint of supporting one another's, embracing roles, accepting roles, and those were hard lessons for me at the time, and I'm embarrassed to say that because it should have been really obvious. I was a Division III basketball player.
Right.
At the end of the day, it was what I love to do, but those other things are a lot more important than how many minutes you play in a game, how many points you score, and all that stuff.
And I want to sort of rocket to the future for a moment, because you mentioned sort of the presence of mind of 21-year-old Brad Stevens versus 40-year-old Brad Stevens. And I sat with a guy yesterday in the same space who is a 22-year-old rookie for you right now, Shemi Ojale. independent of the fact that he's a fantastic talent on the court, how valuable is that to have a rookie who's been through some stuff? He's 22. He's not.
He's been through some stuff, and things did not go easy for him at Duke. He transferred to SMU. He's very bright. He's a guy that I actually, when I was still at Butler, we were starting to recruit him before he blew up and had, Kansas, Duke, and everybody else on him. But a very impressive young guy that, we think has a bright future ahead of him.
So let's get back to the college experience, because you mentioned, you graduate from DePaul. There's a year, and a really fascinating year that maybe 17 years later, you're finally able to put into context. In that year, getting a job at Eli Lilly, quitting that job, your then girlfriend, now wife, starts law school as a plan B. You get a job at Applebee's, then quit the job at Applebee's when Thad Matta hires you. All in one calendar year. It's funny because
all in about 4 months or about 9 months, yeah.
That's nuts. You were due for a boring couple of years. You still haven't gotten any. I'm wondering if, because I talked to Bob Cousy about how he was going to be very content opening up a driving school in Worcester. How close were you, not to being, the best host that Applebee's ever saw, but how close were you to just being like, this is accelerating too quickly, we need to slow it down? Or was 21-year-old Brad Stevens just really enjoying the hype?
I think that once I decided to leave the corporate world and try the coaching thing, I knew that I didn't know where it would lead.
Sure.
I was a volunteer assistant. I was actually paying to go to grad school, and that's why, between that and paying rent, then I needed to get the Applebee's job, and so I was supposed to start training the day that I ultimately got hired to be the director of basketball operations at Butler, which was, obviously not a very high-paying job, but as much fun as I've ever had, because I really learned so much more about basketball. It was like you spend your whole life playing basketball, and then you're taught to look at it through a totally different lens. And so I really appreciated the opportunity to do that. And I didn't know where it would lead, but I knew this. The people I was around right then were special.
Yeah.
And so Thad Matta was the head coach. He just finished as the all-time winningest head coach at Ohio State. Todd Licklider was his lead assistant. He spent 6 years as the head coach at Butler, then 4 at the University of Iowa. We had a player. We had John Gross, who's now the head coach at Akron, who was at Illinois the last few years, was on our staff. We had a player who was a senior named LaVall Jordan, who just got named the new Butler head coach. On and on and on. Just a tremendous environment for growth.
And now you're 29 years old in 07 when you ascend to when you're named the Butler head coach. Which is, when you're 29 years old, you feel like you've...
I think I was 30.
You were 30? Okay.
Yeah. I was 30, barely.
Which means something, right? You're like, I'm a man, I'm 30, right? But but now looking back, right, 30 years old, you're recruiting guys who are only 13 years your junior, but the success, it wasn't just the Butler way, which is something that you guys were talking about a lot in those days. You won 50 of your first 56 games. What was it about the Brad Stevens style? Was it that you still saw yourself as a bit of a player who just happened to be the guy on the sidelines?
No, we had good players.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line. You can't win in coaching if your players aren't really good. And I've told this story a few times, but my first year at Butler, we had 5 seniors. We had, a guy that continues to play overseas and has had a great career overseas. We had another guy who could have played overseas, but some injuries derailed that, and he's an actuary. We have another guy who's running his own academy. We have another guy who's doing coaching and sales, and we have a 5th guy who's a radiologist. And they were all totally invested in each other and had already achieved something. They went to the Sweet 16 the year before. We ended up getting beat by Al Horford and Joakim Noah in that Florida team, but we had a 1-point lead with 4 minutes to go. We had a chance. And they were all just exactly who you would want to lead your program.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, I got to make a decision on captains, because I thought captains were important at that time in life. I've since changed my mind on that. I think it's more about everybody does their job well and it all adds up at the end. And we just named them all. So half our team were captains.
That's awesome.
But we followed those guys, and they ended up winning 30 games. And, I remember sitting in my office with them and telling them, hey, all 5 of you are going to have a moment this season where it doesn't go well for you, or I do something you don't agree with, and just come in here and tell me, and then we'll be able to move forward as a group after we have that discussion privately. Yeah. And it was really good because those guys were tremendous to coach and gave off the impression that we knew what we were doing, and so it helped us coach the young guys, and ultimately that kind of laid the foundation for those next few years. But at Butler, one of the things, and you see it as we go coach to coach, and we've had a bunch of coaches at Butler in a short amount of time in the last 17 years, but we're all really committed to the values and the vision of the organization, and that in and of itself was the foundation.
Yeah.
And I mean, anybody that came in, coach, player, staff member, somebody else in the athletic department, everybody was aligned to try to help the people that were there have the best experience possible, and we all benefited from that. And that's why I think it's the best culture that you could possibly be in.
One more Butler question before we rocket to the Celtics. In 2010, some kid named Hayward narrowly misses that half-court shot to it's the greatest near moment in NCAA history. First question, do you still see that shot in your head every night when you close your eyes? And second question, whatever happened to that guy, that Hayward fella?
Yeah, obviously he's going to be joining us this year, and it was so surreal to be back in the recruiting process in early July because you have a 27-year-old adult versus the last time you sat in that when he was a 17-year-old trying to figure the world out and trying to figure out if he was, if he believed in himself enough to be a great basketball player at the college level. Gordon was for all of you that play summer basketball and play a ton of games, Gordon didn't play any summer basketball after he committed to us. He tried to win the state in tennis and almost did. I mean, he was a top probably 10 player in the state of Indiana in tennis. He started off his senior year where I would say he had a decent senior year up through the middle of the season. Then he all of a sudden took off and led his team to a state championship, and that was really where this quick spike took place with him. I never think about that shot. We see it every March. I think that around Butler, all those guys meant so much to the school, to what that continues to mean to the school, how well they did in front of this all of a sudden newfound attention. They were, we were well known on, maybe in a 5-mile radius, but nobody really knew who any of us were. And then all of a sudden you go to a Final Four, it's in your hometown, and now it's a totally different amount of attention and an amount of responsibility to deal with that attention. And, that whole group was special. So I don't ever think about those are 2 near misses we had. That was just a special group to be a part of, and that's it.
That's cool. That's such a great way, and I think that's one of the reasons why 3 years later those discussions start to happen, where you are the top of the list, and the discussion between you and the Boston Celtics start to take shape. Can you talk to me about the discussions between you and your family?
Yeah. So Doc left. I think it was on a Tuesday right before the draft. Mm-hmm. Danny called that night, said he was interested in me being the coach of the Celtics, and I had to let that sink in for a minute. I grew up in the state of Indiana, so for those of you that grew up in the New England area, the tradition, the lore, the history, I knew all about it because I was a basketball guy. I'm not sure I knew about it at the intensity level of which you know about it, especially being from this area. But those are the first things. So you're flattered, you're honored. It's hard to think about, but then at the same time, you have to really take a step back and say, okay, I'm in a tremendous situation where, we have a real way that we do things, and I believe in it, and I can, I feel really good about where we are. And so to move, you have to feel like, it's going to be the right situation for your family.
Right.
And the hard part about that is because of the amount of attention on a coach and the possibility of moving, I really couldn't run it by my 7-year-old. Because he might end up saying something to somebody at the wrong time, and he doesn't know any better, and it's not his fault. But whatever a 7-year-old says can be used on Instagram and Twitter now, right? So, it's my wife and I in a lot of deep discussion for a long time, and then, because of, again, the sensitive nature of the job you have, and you don't want it to be a firestorm or a media storm. I was really, really picky with who I talked to. I had to really trust that was not going to become a story. The most important thing for me was to be able to tell the players at Butler I was leaving, and do so in my own words, which I stumbled through. But that's the hard part of the world we live in. But they were great options, and we've been really lucky because that relationship with Butler continues to be great. My wife's on the board. We were back there and stayed near campus for 5 days just 2 weeks ago, and my son and I went and played at the rec center almost every day. And it truly is. This has become home for us, but we'll always have that home at Butler in Indianapolis.
How long did it take for the office to feel like yours? Was there one particular signing? Was there one particular roster?
If you called my desk, because I don't even know what my office number is. This is true. If you call my office right now, it'll go to Doc Rivers' voicemail. So I have no idea. I still don't. I don't think I'm ever comfortable, but I think that, I walk by Red's picture on the way up the stairs, and Doc's on the voicemail, and I'm just trying to coach our team as well as I can.
Do you pass along any messages to Doc?
No, I think it probably keeps people from calling. They think it's the wrong number. It's actually a pretty good deal.
It's a fantastic deal.
That's right.
You think I can get Doc's voice on mine?
I should have made my email drivers@celtics.com. Yeah.
This is one of my favorite parts, ladies and gentlemen, because after this question, I'm going to ask which of you might want to ask Coach Brad Stevens a question. So now's the time to start thinking about anything that you would like to ask. And after this question, after he answers this, I'll ask you to raise your hand. One of the great Hoop Hall staffers will come around and select 2 or 3 of you as well and put you in line over to our right, your left. Okay, let's talk about the offseason. Because you're right. I mean, you mentioned that when we booked this, it seemed like just a nice way to spend an August afternoon. Just you and me talking. There have been some amazing, amazing moments. Let's talk about draft night. Because draft night was a night that I think for Celtic fans really helped us to, get over some of the disappointment of the week before. To get over some of the disappointment of the finals loss. Did that night play out the way that you had expected it to in the first round? Or is there so much constantly changing terrain that you never even really bothered to set your heart on anything?
I think when you're picking third, you have a pretty good idea about how that's going to go. I mean, we knew obviously after we traded that pick that Philly was going to pick Fultz. Obviously, there was a lot of thought that Lonzo Ball was going to go second to the Lakers. So you knew that, there's not as much, there's not as much drama if you're picking right at the top. So we knew that we were going to pick Jason with the third pick, and we were really excited about the opportunity to add Jason to the Celtics, and we think, he's really going to add a lot. One of my favorite things about him is that he's 19 years old and he realizes it. like he's got a great way about him. He said the other day when somebody asked him, you know, how do you think that this team will be able to compete at the highest level? And he said, I don't know.
Oh.
I've never played in this league before, right? So like,
That's refreshing.
that is refreshing, and that's a really good place to start. And so the drama really begins, I guess, when you get into the second round or late first, and you know, when a guy like Ojale, you know, you start to look at the 30th pick, and he's not been picked yet, 31st, not been picked yet. Man, can he possibly drop to 37? If so, that'd be great. That's when the drama really begins.
Yeah. So now here's the fun part. If you have a question for Brad Stevens, please feel free to raise your hand, and one of the great Hoop Hall staffers will select a handful of you. This draft night for me as a hoop head has always been one of those moments where I sort of, especially that second round, and a guy who grew up watching the A-10, you get all those mid-major guys. And so the Shemi pick seemed very logical to me. Roster construction in terms of 1 year to the next seems to be one of your strong points. Can you talk about last year's roster and the way that maybe it will be different?
Well, obviously that's, you know, my job is to coach the guys on the roster. And so the roster construction is something that, you know, obviously Danny and his staff lead. And I think that, you know, once we're able to figure out who's on the roster, then we have to figure out how best to utilize the strengths of those on the roster to complement one another. And I think that, you know, the one thing that's been really interesting is that we have so many young guys still because we've had so many picks. And so getting to know what those guys do best but can actually impact or add value to winning in an NBA game may not be as discernible until they're out there.
Yeah.
And so you really have to kind of to wait and see. Obviously, you don't know how Shemi or Abdul Nader or Jason Tatum or somebody that has never played an NBA game will impact it the way you know that maybe Irving or Hayward or Horford or guys like that that have played at a high level will do.
Is it going to be weird without some of last year's guys around this year?
Yeah, I mean that's the reality of a week like this week is that, you know, obviously I think the great benefit that we have in this business, whether you're a coach, a player, whatever the case may be, front office, is that the people that you get a chance to meet and ultimately get a chance to coach it's each relationship, you know, it provides a great deal of opportunity to grow together, opportunity to learn together, opportunity to spend time together. You know, obviously, anytime that you can add really talented people to your roster who are really excited about, you know, growing together, like we have this summer, then that's a really good thing. But the hard part, and it's tough, right, is that when you're in that locker room every day as a coach, when you're in that locker room every day as a player, I mean, we've had quite a bit of turnaround. And for me personally, there's a lot of emotions attached to that. And so, you know, this is one of those things where, you know, you're so thankful and appreciative to each and every individual. And it's almost hard to lump them together as a group. You want to talk about each of them individually, you know, whether it be Avery Bradley and all that he meant over the last 4 years, whether it be Jay Crowder and his great ascension as he played here and you know, the way that he took advantage of an opportunity that maybe he didn't get before. And then obviously Isaiah and just his incredible impact, both in the locker room, on the court, in the community. You know, you're going to miss all of those guys, and that's and the other guys. I mean, we have 4 players back from last year, but I'm exceptionally thankful to have had a chance to spend time with each and every guy that's been through our locker room. I didn't anticipate this much change. But, you know, we've got a month to get our minds wrapped around our team and how we can best move forward. And we're excited about the guys that we're going to have on our team, and obviously the buzz around Kyrie and the buzz around Gordon and the buzz around the Celtics.
So are we. My last questions before we get to, it looks like we got some heavy hitters over here. I think that we've got, yeah, there's going to be some hard ones over here, I can tell. I know this isn't your first time in this building. I know that you're a student of basketball. But can you qualify this moment right now, this exact moment, sitting here beneath the faces of all those who have come before, in front of this crowd, with the backdrop we have? What is this like for Brad Stevens?
Yeah, I mean, this is special. And, you know, my son played in a basketball tournament here a couple of years ago, so we actually came early on a Saturday, and Scott was nice enough to let us in, and so we had a chance to walk up top, and on that, I think it's the third level, and look at all the different people that have been inducted, a ton from Indiana.
Yeah.
A ton that I could tell stories about, right, to my son, which was really fun. And to say, like, hey, there's Tony Hinkle, who Hinkle Fieldhouse at Butler is named after, and why he's in the Basketball Hall of Fame. And then there's a couple places down, there's Everett Case. My last game as a high school player was in Case Arena in front of 7,000 people. And so you just have all these ties to this game. And, you know, this game is the reason why, you know, and I do believe this, we have to take ourselves back a little bit sometimes and say, okay, this is just a game, right?
Right.
But it really is bigger than that because of the impact that it can have on the people involved, the what a gym means to the people that have grown up playing, what team means, what community means, and everything else.
Fantastic. Now let's get to some hard questions, shall we? Come on up, Mr. Man. Here, I only have 2 requests. One, that you allow me to hold the microphone, and 2, that you introduce yourself to Coach before you ask. Sound good? Deal? All right.
What's your name?
My name is Alex Amaral.
Hi, Alex.
So I have one question. This year in the playoffs, the Bulls took a 2-0 lead against us, and then when Rajon Rondo got hurt, we ended up getting the momentum back and winning. Was there any thought put into signing Rondo this offseason?
You can ask Danny those questions.
Okay.
I think that he had a great first couple games of the series. That was a very unique time for our team, with obviously Isaiah's sister's tragic death, and that was one of the most unique experiences that I've been through personally, because that group of guys really supported each other and had right perspective on what we were trying to accomplish, but also that there was something a lot bigger going on. But it doesn't take away from how well Rondo or the rest of that team played, and they put us in that hole, and we were lucky to get out.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Excellent question. I told you this is where it gets hard.
Yeah, I know.
These kids throw fastballs.
I know.
How are you, sir?
Hey there, I'm Stratton. Nice to meet you.
Hi, Stratton. I'm just going to keep standing up.
All right, I was just wondering if you think that the trade for Kyrie Irving gives you guys a better chance to beat the Cavs and win the East.
You know what? I'm a lot more concerned about us just building the team and growing, you know, and I'm always that way. Our ultimate goal in Boston is to win the whole thing, because that's the precedent that's been set before us. You know, we have 17 banners in our practice facility, and we actually have a blank one that's sitting up there too. But all of that takes a backseat to making sure that right now we just focus on the day and the progress that it takes to get there. As I said last year, I mean, we were really fortunate to be in the position we were in, and we got tremendous play from our players. And so time will tell on how good of a team we can become, but it's going to be a lot of people having to embrace roles quickly, because we're going to have to get to know each other quickly.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stratton. How are you, sir?
Hi,
What's your name?
Cal.
Hi, Cal. Like Coach Cal? Yeah?
But how do you plan to get the chemistry between the players started?
It's a really good question. In the NBA, we are allowed to work with the players in the off season on a 1-on-1, 2-on-2, or 3-on-3 basis. It's voluntary. They have to choose to do that. So we don't get a chance to officially practice with our whole team in a 5-on-5 situation until September 26th. So it's going to be a lot of work together. It's going to be a few team meals on the road. It's going to be opportunities to grow and those type of things together. But I think we also have to just take a step back and realize it's going to take time. It's not going to happen in 3 weeks. It's going to have to be something that builds over time, and hopefully we can grow into a good basketball team. We'll see.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great question, Cal. Team meals on the road. You ever take them to Applebee's? Tell them about the old days.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is John.
Hi, John.
I was wondering, what did you say to Kelly Olynyk to have that great game against the Washington Wizards in the playoffs?
So this is the part where I tell you that coaching is really overrated. I didn't say anything different to Kelly. He had a tremendous game, and that was, and I actually talked to him the day after he signed with Miami. With our cap situation at that time, it was going to be hard to re-sign him as well. And I'm really happy for him that he was able to really continue to improve. He was always a great teammate and take advantage of those major moments. And so, I'm happy for him. He's going to be really hard to play against. He's a really good player.
Thanks, bud. We'll bring in the closer here. Look at this, sprinting in from the bullpen.
Are you a Notre Dame football fan? Are you a Notre Dame basketball fan?
Yes.
As much as Butler?
Yes.
You should like Butler more. At Butler, you could put Butler up here in basketball, but you can still root for Notre Dame football. Will that work?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
I'm glad we got that cleared up.
That's right. What you got? And what's your name?
My name is Shane.
Hi, Shane.
Shay. And why did you trade Isaiah Thomas to the
I think that's an excellent question. And here's what I'll tell you is that what he did in Boston the last 2.5 years has been incredible. I said earlier what he's meant to me, what I think of him, how great he's been in the locker room, what kind of a teammate he's been. And those are all really, really, really hard decisions. And that's the hard part about being a professional basketball coach. I've stared at the wall many times and thought, man, having guys in college for 4 years and then knowing exactly when they're coming and going is a pretty good way of doing things. And so that's a tough one.
Thank you, Shay. The closer throws heat.
What's that?
Closer throws
Yeah.
heat. He just, ladies and gentlemen.
I should have asked him about Notre Dame football. How are we going to be this year? Hey, Shane, come back here. Where's Shane?
Shay, are you here?
Come here.
He's ready.
Hold on, come here. What's Notre Dame football look like this year?
pretty good.
Who do they open up with? They've got Georgia the second week, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you ever been to a game over there?
Only once.
It's special, right? Yeah. It's kind of like going to like Wrigley Field or Fenway Park, or the next time your parents take you over there, make sure you drive 2.5 hours south and go to Hinkle Fieldhouse. Okay? We've got a deal, right? Okay, good. Thanks.
He's got some hustle.
He can move.
Do you know what's awesome? Before we close here, it strikes me because we are, like I said, the same age. In 3 years, Coach, you're going to be coaching dudes who weren't alive when we were in college. That's a quick turnaround because it doesn't seem like that. It doesn't seem like that long ago. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and give a warm Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame thank you to Coach Brad Stevens.
Thank you.